Hey y'all, so this will be a piggyback from my previous post where the inmate was on death row. I went to go take a look at a list of inmates on death row in Texas, and this is what I found. Now, this list did come out 2 years ago in 2023, but these people are still awaiting execution. All right, let's see. So the first one here is the Mr. Hector Acosta. He was convicted in the slayings and mutilation of two people, one of whom was beheaded back in 2017, and he has been on death row for 5 years now. All right, so the next one we have is Guy Allen, and he was convicted in the stabbing deaths of his ex-girlfriend and her daughter back in 2002. He has been on death row for 21 years now. And here we have Kerry Allen. He was convicted in the sexual assault and murder of a 2-year-old child back in 2000. He has been on death row for 24 years now. And next we have Juan Alvarez. He was convicted for his participation in 2 drive-by shootings back in 1998. He has been on death row for 25 years now. And next we have Arturo Aranda, and he was convicted in the shooting death of an undercover officer during a drug bust back in 1976, and he has been on death row for 46 years now. And here we have Perry Allen Austin, and he was convicted in the murder of a 9-year-old boy back in 1992, and he has been on death row for 23 years now. And then there's Rigoberto Avila Jr. He was convicted in the beating death of a child in El Paso back in 2000. He has been on death row for 24 years now. Next is Carlos Manuel Ayestas, and he was convicted in the strangling death of a woman whose home he was burglarizing back in 1995, and he has been on death row for 27 years now. And then there's Juan Balderas, and he was convicted in a gang-related shooting back in 2005. He has been on death row for 11 years now. And next we have Anthony Barty. He was convicted in the murder of a 37-year-old male back in 1996, and he has been on death row for 27 years now. And here is Tedric Batiste. He was convicted in the shooting death of a man during a carjacking back in 2009. He has been on death row for 14 years now. And next is Demond Dupree Blunston, and he was convicted in the shooting deaths of his 21-month-old son and his girlfriend's 6-year-old boy back in 2012. He has currently been on death row for 9 years. Next is Brent Ray Brewer, and he was convicted in the robbery and stabbing death of a 66-year-old man back in 1990. He has been on death row for 34 years now. And here we have Alan Bridgers. He was convicted in the shooting death and robbery of a 53-year-old female back in 1997. He has been on death row for 27 years now. And here we have James Garfield Broadnax. He was convicted in the shooting death of a man during a robbery back in 2008. He has been on death row for 16 years now. And this is Micah Crowford Brown, and he was convicted in the shooting death of his ex-wife while she was in her car with their 2 children back in 2011. He has been on death row for 12 years now. And this is Eugene Broxton. He was convicted in the robbery and murder of Sheila Dawkins of Louisiana back in 1991. He has been on death row for 32 years now. And this is Arthur Lee Burton. He was convicted in the strangling death of a female whom he confronted while she was jogging through her neighborhood back in 1997. He has been on death row for 26 years now. And here we have Edward Lee Busby Jr., and he was convicted in the abduction and murder of a 78-year-old woman back in 2004. He has been on death row for 19 years now. And this one right here is Tyrone Cade. He was convicted in the stabbing deaths of his girlfriend and her daughter back in 2011. He has been on death row for 13 years now. And this is James Calvert. He was convicted in the murder of his ex-wife. And after the murder, he kidnapped his 4-year-old son and fled the state back in 2012. He has been on death row for 9 years now. And next is Anibal Canales. He was convicted in the strangling death of a 47-year-old offender in a prison cell back in 1997. He has been on death row for 24 years now. And here we have Evan Abner Cantu. He was convicted of fatally shooting his 27-year-old cousin back in 2000. He has been on death row for 23 years now. Next is Kimberly Cargill. She was convicted in the murder of a woman who was set to testify against her in a child protective case back in 2010. She has been on death row for 13 years now. And here we have Tylan LaShawn Carter. He was convicted in the murder of an 89-year-old man during a robbery back in 2004. He has been on death row for 18 years now. Next is Linda Carty. She was convicted in the abduction and murder of a 25-year-old woman back in 2001. She has been on death row for 23 years now. And then we have Eric Dwayne Caffey. He was convicted in the abduction and murder of Christina Castillo in Houston back in 1995, and he has been on death row for 28 years now. And Jamie Piero Cole was convicted in the shooting deaths of his wife and 15-year-old stepdaughter back in 2010. He has been on death row for 13 years now. And I'm gonna do one more, y'all. This is Dylan Compton. He was convicted in the beating death of a prison guard, Marion Johnson, at a Abilene prison back in 2016. He has been on death row for 6 years now. And child, there is plenty more. So let me know in the comments if you want a part 2. Y'all be safe.